Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary pals, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this newest edition of The Kindred. We're proud to bring you episode 3. I know we had some lofty expectations from episode 2. We had discussed the idea that we were going to make sure we could go over some of the units, their combat viability, things along those lines. We also wanted to get deeper into the notion of a meta, right? We wanted to speak to how are specific units used in one way? How are they used broadly? What's the overall format archetypes looking like right now? But then we found out that we had a lot to talk about. We
Our eyes
kind
were
of
bigger
ran
than our
over on
stomachs.
time.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they tend to be.
Yeah, tend to be.
But before we go any deeper than that, just to set the stage again, thanks for joining us. I'm GP, here to talk to you about everything Votan in any way that we can. And my friend, yourself?
The pastrami king of New York, the sausage daddy, the pizza pepperoni himself. Actually,
Wow.
pastrami.
Wow. The beautiful list of accolades. I couldn't put it any better myself. Now, today, there's one thing for us to say, hey, we're just two regular jamokes, huh? We're just talking about what's going on. We have a couple of GTs and stuff under our belts. Hell, I had one like 2 weeks ago myself. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. But like I said, it's one thing for us to talk about the meta, and it's one thing for us to break into things further and just give you the idea of what our perception is and how we take on that, right? But we thought maybe let's jump in for the first time here and see what it's like to maybe get some outside perspective, right?
And who better to do it than, so the person we're bringing in, I feel like is the person in our Discord, in the Leagues of Voting competitive Discord, that is like the foundation of a lot of people and how they approach playing the game competitively and what they bring and why they bring it. And so kind of the perfect person to bring into the fold.
I refuse to glaze him up, but he does deserve it because it's not only in the Votan, but he does the same in the Gene Stealer cult community.
Oh, that's right, because you both played GSE.
Yep. So he's a Goonhammer contributor, member of WC Team Poland, plays all over the place. You've heard us mention him in the last 2 episodes, but today we wanted to make sure we could bring on Mr. Danny Porter. As a reminder for those of you that maybe haven't interacted with him in the past, this is Big Papa Danny. He's out there. He kind of was the pioneer of some of the strats we've mentioned of using Uthar in specific ways, of breaking out those melee warriors and kind of finding these somewhat niche uses of some of the limited toolkits that we have and bringing them to great success. Just as far as intent goes, Danny was the first person in the world to go 5-0 and I believe win a GT with Tau back before people even really had unlocked its full potential. He's been taking Votan out to great success so
even
far.
Early 10th when they were terrible.
Yes. Yep. Was breaking it out just to show that he could. What a cute little guy. And he was doing the same with Gene Stealer Cult, and ultimately he's one of those guys that recognized that Gene Stealer Cult was so strong at launch. Nope, too much. He had to pull it back, had to bring himself to the dwarves just for the handicap to keep the playing field fair.
What a man of the people,
So, not only that, but he's also running the Alien Majesty YouTube channel, Patreon. They have all that going on there. So, in general, just grateful to have a few minutes with him. And we're excited to show you the kind of insight that he brings to the table.
Exactly. We really hope that some of his ideas or not necessarily ideas, but some of his insights into the meta and where Votan fits and where they fit best against, where they're weakest against, kind of help y'all too. So sit back.
I'm also going to note to preemptively defend us, to make sure we could talk to Danny because he is located in Poland.
Yes.
Mr. Pastrami and I have woken up at like 6 a.m. to make sure we could meet and discuss things with you. So if we make any verbal faux pas, we accept your apologies and thank yous in advance. Totally fine.
I'm gonna be
pass no
today.
judgment. We're doing the best we can.
Exactly. There's a reason why I'm just wearing a sweat. Actually, I usually just wear a sweatshirt and a beanie anyway, but I'm disheveled. I'm definitely, I'm disheveled. So
we're looking good.
And with that, here we have the one and only Danny Porter. Wait, oh wait, oh wait, for you it's no wait, for you point this way,
Oh, it's
GP.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Who
it's
knows?
kind of everywhere.
There's no way of knowing.
Exactly. Danny, thank you so much for being here. You are, I feel
Awesome.
like a fountain of both knowledge and just kind of a positive like a push in our group in especially in the Votan Discord. A lot of people come to you, myself included. Like I would say, like with how to play our boy. So first and foremost, you want to give the people who already know you anyway a little description of who you are, like a little brief Danny Porter deal here.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm English. I live in Poland. Uh, obviously. I hate doing these things. Yeah, I play Votan, GSC, Tau, and I play in a lot of tournaments every year for like the last 2 years. I don't know what you're supposed to say.
That
Yeah,
well,
that's
what
fine. You
that's
actually play. I think it's worth making sure we can stress it to people. You play an inhuman amount of Warhammer compared to the average person, right?
That sounds really sad when you say it like that.
No,
no
it's
no no
great.
no 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 no
No,
no.
no,
It's
no.
definitely not sad.
Between because there's a thing that oftentimes you'll get a lot of things, especially when you go on to like the competitive Warhammer subreddits, where you have people that have really strong opinions that realistically probably play like once a year that shouldn't really have a strong opinion about anything. But you do
Your
have some
opinion is
people.
backed up, is I think
Yes.
what GP is
You
saying.
do
Yeah,
have
I
some people like Danny who, between TTS, you're an avid user of TTS for practices, which a lot of people don't properly leverage. Between that and actual major tournaments fairly
Yes.
regularly, you're getting reps in building an actual
Exactly.
foundation for the opinions that you hold.
Exactly.
I think it's important actually because for say let's say if you split it between 80, 10 and 10, 10% will barely ever play a game. 80% will play on average max 1 to 2 games a week. And then you've got the 10% that'll play a lot. And the 10% are the ones that sort of go out and test everything possible, keep up on top of the meta, and then share that knowledge. And I think that's really important.
Very.
So the reason I play a lot
Great
is
breakdown.
to do that. Obviously, for Poland, we need a lot of data to understand what the meta is constantly to keep up because we've got a lot of team events. For me personally, I want to always try and knowledge share with people that can't play as much because I've got a lot of free time. I don't
Sure.
have kids. I'm lucky in that sense, I suppose. Um, so I have a lot of free time. So I think it's very important that people are able to go out there, and it's not really also people can't shame it because I think it's quite an important role in a
100%.
community.
100%.
And you mentioned Team Poland getting a lot of data. They actually won the WTC this year, correct?
Yes, yes, we won
Yeah.
this year, came second last year.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah. Wow,
fantastic.
that's a track record there if I ever
Team
heard one.
Poland's got some heavy hitters on there, man. You hear some of the folks. I forget his name, but you had a gentleman. I think he showed up and played guard almost every round and almost
No,
100
Stark.
every. Oh, absolute Chad, that one.
Mhm.
All
Um,
right,
Is
so
well,
is well known.
we wanted to get you in because I feel like the other well, for one, you are a fountain of knowledge, but also the other day you mentioned about doing a write up on kind of like Votan and where they sit with a bunch of different armies in the meta. And I feel like that's really
Mhm.
important info, and especially a good space to expand upon in an outlet like this. So I don't know how you'd want to get in, but I feel like in regards to our boys and how they're doing. First off, they're doing well. I think we all can agree. No one can disagree. They are doing well. I feel like personally, I feel like that's going to start to dip because people are getting used to them, and not as many people are. A lot of that commotion when they got good are going to start to die down because those people that like ran to them are probably going to go back to their other armies they play more of.
yeah,
Not necessarily bandwagoners, but I feel like some of that will happen. Like we'll start to see less of them being played. And then probably come in a month or so when we get our points update, I'm sure we're gonna get hit in some way. But where we're at now, I think we would love to get kind of some of your thoughts on the army, their best and worst matchups against them, and then probably I think we talk a lot in the Discord about, and I think this is a meta conversation about our secondary choices between fixed and tactical. I think if if we can do all of that in an hour, we don't have to. But I think let's start with our boys, how they're doing, who they do best against, who they do worst against, and we go from there. I don't know. Is that chill?
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So
Sorry, you have to excuse me. I've got a cough. I'll try and mute
you're good,
myself.
brother. really quick, just to make sure we set the stage, we make sure this functions as far as future timing goes, just so everybody knows. Right now, we are looking at November. In the 10th meta,
Very good point.
we had a recent data slate update about a month or two ago that gave us some updates. Prior to that, Leagues of Votan were functioning at, depending on whether or not you're using the 40K Meta Monday, if you're using stat check and stuff for your data, or you're going by GW numbers, Votan was functioning between a 35 and like 42% win rate.
I think that's being
keeping in mind.
nice.
Yes, and win rate is not everything. That is not what these numbers mean, but it gives you an idea of what the meta is. So Votan was functioning as a bottom 3 army. If you look into the most recent data at this time, your top 5 over the past couple weeks is looking somewhere along the lines of Eldari. So you have Eldar still at the top. You have Black Templars functioning fantastically. Chaos Space Marines, whether that's just in raw Chaos Space Marines going the normal route, whether you're looking at World Eaters, you're being a real cool guy and you're taking World Eaters, and then Leagues of Votan, still right at the top. So right now they function number-wise as a top 5. They've had a tremendous rise up. But again, those are just numbers. There's nuance to that, and we've talked about it.
This is what's weird, actually, because like the power of different armies depends entirely on where you play.
Yes.
So in America, some armies are more top than others in the UK, in EU, on WTC terrain or whatever. So like for instance, I would say in Europe, Death Guard is probably stronger than Votan.
Sure.
Because we use a lot of WTC terrain, there's a lot of staging points for them.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, if you play, especially if you play player place terrain or you play on Games Workshop's terrain, then there's a lot more power in Votan because they can abuse that a lot more. We saw Votan do decently well at the Worlds, which just happened last weekend. And that's because there's a lot of firing lanes and a lot of staging angles that benefits Votan.
Yeah,
so,
Votan in general, it changes crazy based on the terrain that you have. In America, it's worth calling out again for any of the listeners. America probably has the craziest variance in terrain.
Yeah.
You're going to have some locations like the Northeast US, we try to mirror a lot from WTC. We actually follow most of their terrain guidelines for a lot of items, but we use GW 1 and 2 typically for most of the terrain setups. You'll have everything from WTC terrain in America to this is just Planet Bowling Ball. Here's your local RCT table. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
So the idea of building to your meta, exactly like Danny said, so hey, you have to know what you're going into and then build for that.
Very important.
Always keep it in mind. Danny,
Very
I'm so
important.
sorry.
I do think that is a really important point, actually, because especially when we talk in the Discord, a lot of people ask about lists and they'll be like net listing lists that winning. And I always say this, if I go to a tournament and I do well with a list and someone says, what list did you take? I'll be like, right, this is my list, but don't play it because it's not going to work in your tournament. Yeah, and that's important. That's really important.
You do add that caveat all the time. Like, don't do this list.
I've had people who've taken a list that I've played before, they've gone and they've done really badly. And I'm like, well, that's because it's not built for that terrain setup. And you've got to really, especially with Votan. Votan's in a weird predicament, I would say, the way it works. Because let's be fair, it's really bad data sheets. It's really good stratagems, really good enhancements, really good points cost, but really bad data sheets. So you've got to be able to tech the right way and build the right efficiencies into deal with the terrain setup. Because if you don't, then you don't actually achieve much. And then you sort of whiff, die, and not have a good time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important people understand terrain and scoring system makes a big difference.
Very much so.
Everything. Yeah. And that's a great opportunity there. So like you said, make sure you're teching into it. Make sure you're looking at the terrain. You had the Coventry event recently, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how'd you place in that for our viewers at home?
He's like, I did fucking terrible. Thanks for reminding me.
No.
I think it was 5th. I think came 5th. Yeah, came 5th. 7-1. So
nice.
Yeah.
Only
can't be upset about that.
Yeah,
but
losing to the winner.
You had some interesting tech that hilariously anyone who'd followed some of our episodes before would know that Mr. Pastrami and I might be like, I don't know if that would work for me, but what was your list like?
Spoiler alert, it hasn't worked for me. Spoiler alert.
So this is interesting, right? Apologies. So I didn't take any enhancements, and this is what everyone keeps messaging me saying, why didn't you take any enhancements? They're so good, it'd be bad not to take them. But like half of them don't really work on the UKTC tables.
Right.
For instance, the Grim Demeanor doesn't work in accordance to their FAQ, so it's almost a waste of points. Granted, all right, it's kind of really good against Eldar. However, I sort of switched my list a bit to not need it against Eldar, if that makes sense. I'll explain that in a bit. So I didn't take any enhancements. I just wanted to go full bodies, full pressure, as many point efficient units as possible. So I took, what was it, 5 Sagittars, 20 warriors, 20 half guards, 12 bikes, two lots of 5 berserkers, and then 2 champions.
Yeah.
And it did really well. It like I tech I did tech into CSM, into World Eaters, which is like very popular at the minute.
Yeah.
And Eldar. And what did I play? World Eater, CSM, and Eldar. So
Right,
it worked out
right.
quite well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of those things that in in some of the terrain that I'm used to, and that I know that that Ash is used to, berserkers can be rough for me, and we've kind of poo-pooed on them for the last 2 episodes just because we haven't had the same use cases that we've had. But you were able to use them to great success. And the Hearthguard units for you, were those both Volkite?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, definitely. That's just been like universally great for people so far.
To
I actually. Sorry, go on, go on.
Well, I just really quickly, I think this is the reason I'm going to say this is important, because we are talking about your local meta and teching to that. In the last couple of weeks, GP, I have switched to 2 units of berserkers because my meta has changed to the majority of being Death Guard and CSM, and it's worked marvelously. It's worked so well, which is crazy. Except last night, though, I mentioned I was talking in the not last night, 2 nights ago. I was talking in the Discord. I did play my first game against Ironstorm, which I have a lot of Space Marine players at my shop, like an ungodly amount, and I just shit. They shit the bed, really. They did not perform well because everything was a higher strength. So I'm hitting on 4s. Wounding was great. Hitting on 3s most of the time, but my wounding was still pretty low, even though they have such high strength. And I was just like, I really wish I had literally anything else besides these berserks. So I feel like, but that was that specific moment. I think even still, if the trend still is that I'm having a lot of CSM, I'm having a lot of Death Guard, less of the Eldar, which thank God I do have a lot of Eldar in my meta, and like a very good, like David Adelman, who just won ACO last year. He just placed topped at World. He's like, he does very well. He's my, like, one of my main goddamn Eldar players. Like, this dude who just, like, a casual, like, super major, and I'm just like, can you do anything else? And of course he's like, yeah, I'm gonna play CSM for the next one. I'm like, shut up, dude.
That's me with Dan Wolmuth on my end. Can't avoid him. One of the top 10 in the ITC right now. Anything you do, he's gonna show up. If it's a big event, he's playing Eldar, and god damn it, he's gonna beat me at that final table, and there's just nothing I can do about it.
But that's fine though, because like you look at who's playing, you look at what they're playing, and like
Absolutely.
I know that I have. It's like, it is kind of funny. These are meta. Like, none of the people I'm talking about like are really meta chasing. Like, most of these are just average Joes that are just playing a bunch of CSM and Death Guard because they already had these things, right? But like I did throw in Berserks for it because they were crushing it into those matchups for me, and like really working, especially even more of a threat factor than anything. So I feel like you look at those, and like I don't like Berserks for the most part in terms of like how they function, and like you're right, Danny. They most of our data sheets are bad. I think they are also a bad data sheet, but there's damage 3 scares people.
It's weird actually, because like they're only 100 points for 5. So if you come into a matchup where you've not, they don't really work. So for example, in my first game, it was actually against Tau. That's the one matchup they don't really work in,
Right.
because they only move 5 inches and Tau's quite fast, right? And they have Tau fire and fade and long range weapons, so it's hard to actually get your berserkers in. But like, even if they have bad data sheets, 100 points or 200 points to take 2 units, that is actually a meta tech. If it goes into a bad matchup, it's still not terrible.
Sure.
Like, they can still do actions. They can still soak bullets, because you have to kill them, or they will slowly walk towards you. Very slowly, but they will walk
right.
towards
They'll
you.
waddle towards you.
Yeah, and the thing about that is it plays into my whole archetype of how to play Votan, and that's just throw too many units at your opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how you the best way to play it. And so 100 points for 5, great. It's not terrible. It's not expensive. They're good. And I actually, the biggest impact they had for me was actually in the Eldar matchups.
Oh, interesting.
So they did phenomenally in that.
It's absolute threat saturation, huh? Do you want to expand?
Is that
on
just what that is?
Um. So so basically, how it worked. Let's say in my last game, what did I do with the berserk? So in my last game, turn one, I moved my Sagittars and I got the berserks out inside a wall. They weren't on an objective, they were nothing like that. They were just inside the wall. First of all, they were screening, so he couldn't bring any Shadow Spectres out. That's what the first thing they were doing. Secondly, if by some miracle my opponent decides he's going to bring any Wraithguard towards me, they're right behind the wall, ready to get out. Thirdly, it gives the Night Spinner too many targets to shoot at. I don't
Yes.
care if he shoots at my Berserkers. Like he shoots at my Berserkers, and he's not shooting at my Sagittars.
Yeah.
And they're all hidden, but they're all hidden. Um, so for the first turn, my two Berserkers were shooting Warp Spiders,
Sure.
and they killed, I think, like 4 out of 5 Warp Spiders. But then when I wanted to put down my Half Guard and Rapid Ingress, my Berserkers then started shooting his Wraith Guard.
Right.
So what they started to do is give a -2 to move on Wraith Guard, so they move now 4 inches. Which means I have a lot more space then to maneuver. That 2 inches is quite a lot of space. But it also means now that he can see that my opponent can see that there's utility. Is he going to shoot his Night Spinners into my Half Guard and slow them, or is he going to shoot them into my Berserkers and get rid of them off the board?
Right.
Sure.
So the idea here is threats. Sorry, go on.
No, you.
I was going to say the idea here is threat saturation, but the utility that Berserkers are providing in this game is absolutely like second to none.
Yeah.
Because they can kill the stuff that we need to kill. Because the way you beat Eldar is you kill the action monkeys as quick as possible, and that way they can't trade and they can't actually score anywhere near as well. They have to start scoring with characters, and characters are one of the biggest trading units that they've got points wise. And then you can deal with the characters because the whole thing as well about Berserkers is once 2 units are in range of one of them, you can only Phantasm one. So this is why I like having a lot of units. I have Half Guard everywhere. I have Berserkers everywhere. He can't Phantasm everybody. He cannot Night Spinner everybody. So for me, it's pivotal in that way. And it actually worked out really well.
So then that's a very good point. In regards to threat saturation, if you can't, especially an army like Eldar that have the ability to move after you've moved, if they don't have a good place to go to, their threat has now become not necessarily null and void because everything they have is so good, but if their Wraithguard can only run away from your Berserks into Hearthguard or into other Berserks or into like a character, then great, that's awesome. Like good job.
Or they can Phantasm backwards to save themselves, but they're
not doing anything.
Move again another 4 inches. They can't do anything.
Right.
You had mentioned one of the things that I think a lot of players don't always either plan for or use appropriately. And you had staged your warriors behind a wall. So you had put them in a position, I imagine, where not only were you able to take those in direct shots and interact with the Eldar and any of your other opponent's armies in that way, but you also created zones that they could not safely wander into. Am I correct in that?
Exactly.
Because you have that threat range of those warriors. So even if they get hit by that Night Spinner and they can't move that extra 2 inches, you still have that functional 9-inch bubble where if an Eldar unit wanders into it, it's getting bonked.
Well, that's actually a good point. So for those Berserks, sorry, and we're talking about you were talking about Berserks, right, GP?
Berserkers, yeah. He's talking about Berserkers. It's only one of you guys.
And that's actually a good point. When you're playing Eldar, I would assume that you were keeping a lot of things in your Sagittars for a lot of the game, not in the game, the early game, to keep them safe from Night Spinners. And that's something I didn't even think about. Is that a thought process that you have? Like, was that a thought process in the moment, or is that a thought process into things like Eldar or maybe even Guard, whatever has indirect, to have that threat saturate, or like too many targets to shoot at? Is that like
so? It depends entirely on who's indirect. So if it's Guard, it's a little bit differently because Night Spinners, yes, they can kill, but they're more utility based.
Sure.
Also, Night Spinners tend to sort of try and pop the Incarn up, so I don't keep Warriors out because they could kill Warriors. Whereas with Berserkers having a Feel No Pain and then a 5-up armor save in cover, it's like, okay, they don't really kill. 2 does not kill 5 Berserkers.
Right.
And I only care about the grenade launcher anyway. However, if Guard threw a Manticore into 5 Berserkers, I'm pretty sure they'd kill them all.
Sure. Yep. Or like a Whirlwind probably does the same thing, probably kills them all. Like from like in a Space Marines.
contempt. I mean, you'd have to pop armor contempt. This is the other thing as well. It all depends entirely on what the rest of the opponent's list is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for example, in some matchups, my bikes are the most important aspects. In some matchups, the half guard are. Like versus Eldar, the half guard are not important.
Yeah.
Their job is to just move to the middle, sit there, and then just absorb all the bullets. The important unit is the bikes.
Yeah.
Because they can go around and they can start taking out all the tech pieces that Eldar have got and prevent them from scoring. So the bikes are really good. So in that case, my goal in Eldar is to save the bikes. So that's why I was bait with the Berserkers. Against, I would say against.
For now, let's stay on Eldar. I think that's a great choice because you have more success, I think, than a lot of people have against Eldar. When you're looking, or if you're building a list, or if you're going out, I think right now, any top tables, you're going to come across Eldar in some way with most players. What methodology, or how are you looking at Eldar, either from a list building perspective, or once you actually get on the table? Like you said, you're using bikes. I don't think most players, unless they've been following you and taking some of the advice that we've been getting from your experience, are looking at bikes and going, hey, this is potentially the powerhouse that I need for Eldar. What are your thoughts? How are you doing that? How's that looking to you?
Bikes, for me, bikes are the best thing in the index. Why? The biggest problem that we have as an army is speed. I say that we've got Sagittars and bikes. The problem is once you commit to a zone, you're stuck in that zone because your Sagittars will die. They will kill your Sagittars. It is a priority. So once you do that, or you drop your half guard in, they can keep out of charge range. You're sort of stuck to one zone. What bikes allow you to do is just constantly cross zones, and start trading out really well. So I think bikes are really good. The reason why they're really important into elves is elves have to kill the Sagittars. They have to. Otherwise, Sagittars are going to start charging around. And if Sagittars are charging around, they can tie up all the action monkeys, the warp spiders, the shell specters, whatever. And they can't have that. So they have to target the Sagittars first. So the bikes have a bit more free reign, at least for the first 2 to 3 turns, before all the Sagittars are dead and maybe the half guard are, get a bit depleted. Which means that they've got a lot of free reign to do a lot of damage. They have a grenade strat keyword, so they can use the grenade strat, which, by the way, the grenade strat is very good against Eldar.
So good.
The problem with us is that we've got AP1 on most of our weapons. So if you shoot Eldar, they have 3-up armor save on a lot of things. Incarn is 2-up. It's very swingy, right? The grenade strat just helps.
Ironically, against Eldar, one of the few places where you ignoring stealth might actually come up against things like those really annoying shadow specters.
Right.
Yes, this is the other thing. Bikes are also good into a lot of armies that rely on stealth. So we're talking about CSM, we're talking about Tyranids, we're talking about Eldar, Death Guard, and things like that. So ignoring stealth is really good. The other thing as well is bikes are really good for, let's say, late game scoring. So because it's a string of 6, you can cleanse 2 objectives quite well with 2. With a whole squad if you need to, and you're depleted and your warriors are dead, your Sagittars are dead, and your half guard can't get to it. 2 objectives. So actually, in my last game, the last 2 turns, my 6 bikes were scoring 4 on cleanse each turn.
Nice.
Because they've done their job and they could string. So
yeah.
And you had championed recently. I think you were one of the first folks out there that proposed the idea of taking these big 6-man units instead of the typical 3 that I think a lot of us had gotten used to. Full transparency, I went out and I actually tried a 15 bike list myself, and I didn't do it. It didn't work for me, and that's because I didn't have that experience with them. And I think it can be tech-wise a little bit different for folks to actually maneuver and use. You have to be a little aware of them. Otherwise, you can just lose them. What have you been doing with the bikes? Anything particular you can throw out there that you think is important?
Maybe it's a little unorthodox because everyone talks about math. But now with Votann, if I go into any matchup, anytime someone points an anti-tank gun at me, I'll say, right, my Sagittar will die. If anyone points a damage 2 gun or like a above strength 6 gun at my bikes, I'll be like, right, they'll die. So by doing that, I've created this sort of like mentality that if I allow them to shoot me, I will die. So what I often do is I create a line with Sagittars. And they are the front runners. They move forward. They are the big bullets sponges. And then bikes are sort of around the edges, obviously keeping within 6 inches of the edge so they can remaneuver. Keeping it max distance and shooting as much as possible.
Yeah.
And what this does, as long as you pre-measure everything and you do it correctly, they're not going to get touched for a while because they have to deal with all these Sagittars. They have to then deal with the Berserkers inside the Sagittars. And then when they've dealt with them, then your wave of not Pioneers, your wave of Hearthguard are coming down. So then they've got to deal with 20 Hearthguard. So bikes aren't really the back thing of everybody's mind, and that's to our advantage.
Right.
So
No, that's a great way to look at it too, because the idea of making sure that you're keeping them on the side, because we've mentioned it before, and especially in the last episode, but bikes have that fantastic rule where if they're just within 6 of the edge, not wholly within, people, just within 6, they can completely pop up and remaneuver onto the table the following turn if they're not in engagement range. So, I mean, I think that's all fantastic for Eldar. We're talking about other top hitters here, and you had mentioned CSM. How are you looking at approaching CSM right now?
CSM are a weird one, right? Because if you play it correctly, so I played against Liam at Coventry, and Liam knows exactly how to play this matchup. I know exactly how this matchup goes. If you play it correctly, Votan doesn't really have a chance. If you play the right list, mostly because what happens is they have too much shooting pressure with the Forge Fiends and the Obliterators.
Yeah.
And then if you get too close, the Chosen will just kill whatever they charge.
Right.
Like that Lord will kill anything. Like,
that combo, that the Lord and Chosen is bonkers.
Absolutely, they can kill almost a whole Hearthguard squad with just 5 Chosen and a Lord.
And it seems that they don't even need Abby and Terminators anymore. The Chosen and Lord does it enough.
Yep. The thing is it's like there's a lot of the problem with it is they've got a lot of anti-tank with the Forge Fiends, the Obliterators, but then you've got like the random plasma pistol and things like that on the Chosen. But then in terms of anti-infantry, they've got quite a bit of anti-infantry because they've got Chosen melee. But then they've got like random bits of mortal wound guns, dead wound guns.
Yep.
Everywhere.
Combi bolters.
Like everywhere.
Yeah, and like you can lose like I don't know. I think he shot me with like 3 units or whatever, and I lost like 4 Hearthguard just randomly to combi bolters.
Yeah.
Or combi weapons, sorry. So there's a lot of this is also the issue with Votan. I find a lot. There is no it's just crap data sheets. It's just cheap crap data sheets. If someone shoots you with your Hearthguard, you've only got armor contempt to survive, right? You can't resurrect. There's no feel no pain. There's no -1 damage. So you're at the mercy of just chip damage.
Yes.
And it does over time.
We've said it before, but if Hearthguard just either had 3 wounds or -1 damage, it would change the world.
I would take 100-point increase for an extra wound.
Truly. No, truly.
Oh, yeah.
Truly.
Without
because then they would actually be Terminators then. Because that's why I've said this in our last episode. I cannot stand when people call our Hearthguard Terminators because Terminators are better. They have extra wound. That's all there is to it. You know what I mean? I think it's really important to go back with Chaos Space Marines. You're almost always going to find kind of the same flavor of list, whether it be Chosen and a Lord and Forged Fiends, or not always, most time Obliterators, but Abaddon or no Abaddon, whatever. They shoot better than they should. And I feel like the way that we beat them is not necessarily by shooting better than them, or what I think really the way we beat them is based on our scoring aspect into them and kind of like our specific target allocation. The last time I beat CSM and my last RTT was I took out the 2 long range. I took out the 2 Forge Fiends first, and then I just was scoring. I was running away from Chosen. I was running away from Abaddon. He had Abaddon 10 Terminators, and he had 1 brick of Chosen in a Lord instead of the multiple. And I just ran. I was a coward. I was just like, I shot at them obviously when I could, and I actually did kill Abaddon and 10 Terminators. I didn't kill the Chosen and Lord, but it didn't matter. I didn't need to. I won by 15 points, which it was seriously like 90 something to like 80 something, which is a close game. It was only close because he didn't do Grail and Tactical, and B, I had a plan with my fix and I did it and I stuck to it. And I feel like that's really how we beat that specific army. Would you tend to agree on that?
Yeah. So I played CSM twice. I lost to CSM against Liam. Actually, this is the only map I've ever lost on the UKTC. So I went to LGT. I played 9 games. The only 1 game I lost was this specific map against Eldar. Then I played Coventry. Played against Liam. Lost to him on, again, the same exact map.
Whoa.
And the map is basically 4 objectives in the middle, but not one of the objectives in the middle is protected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Forge Fiends and Obliterators are a little too good on that map.
Yeah.
Because you can't actually do fixed or tactical or anything like that. because you just can't score. That's the only option I had was Rush, and it just didn't work out. It's just an unplayable matchup on that map. If you go into a different map though, and let's say it's you've got maps where maybe half the objectives are protected, then I think it's a case of you've got to know exactly if your opponent takes tactical, fantastic, you can deny that. So you've got to play the denying game. And you do that by like utilizing things like just 5 warriors to charge a rhino on an objective, stop him scoring primary whilst you're scoring primary. If for example they get your Sagittars low and they've not drawn bring it down, you just charge all of them into the obliterators or whatever, get them killed. Because that could be like 8 points that you've just denied them. Obviously don't have your characters in a way that they can die if they've not got assassination. And then you've got to focus on fixed. And just for me, it's always cleanse and homers.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to achieve.
Yeah.
Especially if you just take 20 warriors.
In one of my last events when I played against CSM, that's exactly what I did. Cleanse and homers. I focused on just doing that, and then just trading with those key pieces, because the CSM is one of those armies right now where they do ultimately have less total units. They have some pretty expensive things that they're throwing out there.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, it wasn't the meta choice that you're seeing now from CSM, which is those chosen units in rhinos. Those rhinos half the time are gonna almost be blown up, and you can't shoot them outside of 12.
God,
You're protecting a
so
lot of that.
stupid.
What an absolutely listen, I don't want to spend too much time on this. What an absolutely busted ass
It's pretty
stratagem to
It's
give
pretty
yourself non-shootable outside of 12 and stealth.
I don't think that's the most busted thing. I think the fact that they've got this ability that actually it really does improve their power of their units by doing a dark pact, and then oh no, I failed the dark pact, but it's okay. I've got an icon. I'm gonna re-roll it and I'll pass it again.
Right.
That I think is busted. That's like
the hilarity of busted. We haven't even talked about cursed occultists yet, which hilarious. Like a bunch of little idiots that happen to be one of the best units in the game. Like these little stupid dudes with tentacles. Like they're pretty much hentai monsters, and they're like
Dude,
one of the best units in the game.
I think the fact that Manny at Worlds dodged Votan entirely. Votan bred a cursed cultist.
Truly,
Volkite Hearthguard, you're just one-shotting
right?
units with them, right? So it's one of the things that that works out very well. So in one of the lists that I played against, he was taking 2 big bricks of Accursed Cultist instead, but Hearthguard just kind of tear those to shreds fairly effectively.
It's an interesting one actually, because we're scrimming with different countries at the minute, and one of our guys is playing a very similar list to Money, and they're asking me how on earth do they beat the Votan. And he's got like 3 squads of Accursed, and I'm like, great. If you just stand there and shoot and let them shoot you, if you see 1 Accursed Cultist, that squad's dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you hide them behind a ruin, Halfguard do not kill Accursed Cultist.
They don't kill anything. How could they? We're talking about 23-inch threat range. Like what a hilarity.
Move a lovely 5 inches.
Even if you get the charge, you don't kill the Accursed Cultists in melee. So if the CSM player is smart, again, you can make this matchup just unbearable.
Well, you okay?
Yeah, my laptop's about to die. Just keep going. It should be fine.
And I think that goes back to before, is we're seeing Leagues of Votan do very well right now, but I really do think it's because, again, it's a small player pool. Not many players have played against them in the same sense that they're playing against Eldar or Space Marines or whatever. And I really do think if you know, one of my arch nemesis at my shop, one of my dear friends, his name is Taylor. Seriously, it's if there was ever someone that could be the faction representative of like he is that for orcs. Like this man lives and breathes green. I hate it. I love you, Taylor, but I hate you. That's like the bit right now is he thinks I'm actually upset with him because I've literally in years I've never beaten him. He's just really good, right? He knows my army in and out because we play so much together, and that's just he is just like, oh great, here's your threat range. I will just not be in it. Everything you have is dead. Here's my stupid melee army. I'm gonna shoot you with the dumb guns I have, and you can't shoot back because you're too slow. You know, even with Satra,
down to reps.
Yeah,
you have to get that experience.
And I think that's the thing with Votan is I really do think that people when they play against him, they see 4 to 5 Sagittars that are scouting and moving fast, and they see bikes that are scouting and they're like, oh my god, I don't know, what do I do? And it's like, what do you mean you don't know what you do? Like you can kill them easily. You just go run in the Hearthguard. You just run away from them. You don't have to do anything.
I think this is the issue as well because Votan doesn't really have any tricks. It is just pure efficiency.
It's what you're getting.
Yeah. So the key to this matchup about knowing how to win with Votan or knowing how to beat Votan is just pure more information and better understanding of the game than your opponent. If one of them, if you or your opponent has a better understanding, they're probably going to win. That person
Yeah.
will win because it's like you say, it's very obvious. I mean, there are things that you can do to mitigate that. So that's building a list again, not using tactical and using fixed, and then allow yourself to build, contingencies in there that can. Especially you playing a win draw loss system, if you build in contingencies that allow you to deny them even like 5 points while you're scoring max, then you can win.
Yeah.
And there's a
So
lot
that's
of things for those fixed plans and for denying against tactical that a lot of players don't always pay attention to. So Votan, we mentioned before, they have the ability to play fixed very well, whether it's from the Sagittars themselves or all the units within them. Deploying homers or taking things like cleanse are very easy for us to rack up and be able to score. But there's some aspects of when your opponent plays tactical that a lot of folks don't always think about. Something like, hey, if you don't have to take this objective, don't actually sit
Yep.
on the objective because you're going to give them the opportunity to storm a hostile objective or things like that for denying those tactical opportunities.
Yeah, the amount of people I've seen in like games and their opponents taking tactical and they've for some reason pre-game moved on to an objective.
Yeah.
And instantly they've just lost. The opponent draws something like kill on the objective, and
Yep.
they've just lost, given 5 points.
Especially
It's tough.
like turn one, it's like if you're not passively scoring something for whatever reason, whether that be like the tertiary of the mission you're playing or whatever, and you're going onto it, like there's literally no reason. Turn one, you're not scoring shit anyway. So like
Don't touch it.
hide,
You're
hide.
Just giving them points.
Yeah. Hide or
The
shoot.
chance
I don't
of
know.
points.
Yeah, no, very much. In terms of our other like top baddies right now, right? I feel like the next, well, we're in kind of a weird space. I don't know how it is in Europe. I feel like in America, the next top baddie outside of Eldar and CSM are either some other like offshoot CSM, whether it be like World Eaters or Death Guard, or then also just your million different Space Marines that are going to be cropping up.
I think World Eaters is a good one because World Eaters is one that it's coming up right now. People like Anthony Vanella have really brought this out to prominence, and it catches everyone by surprise
It
the
really
first
does.
time you play against it.
It is that first time though, right? I feel like after the first time, I'm like, oh, okay.
time.
Yeah.
So, but you played against World Eaters and you won. So, what's your experience been, Danny?
Actually, for me, was it earlier this year? I played at Alpine and I played for against World Eaters the first time ever, and it was against Anthony Vanella at the Alpine Cup, and I lost 20-0, which was really bad.
Damn, I was hoping you tell me you wiped the floor with him. God damn it,
No.
Anthony. I hope you watch this, motherfucker. I'm gonna come after you one day. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I like, I mean, obviously Anthony being a world-class player, I managed to learn every single trick that World Eaters have in that one game.
Oh, and
So,
he's
and they
perfect
haven't
for it.
exactly, and they haven't really changed how the army works. So
Yeah.
for me, I haven't lost a game against World Eaters, and I've played them 7 times now in 10th.
Yeah.
Nice.
Only recently in the last 2 months. So the trick for me is, first of all, it's about positioning. So a lot of people I notice they put themselves in a really bad position. So let's say you want to put your transport behind a wall, right? But it's behind a wall, behind a room, but there's an objective there.
Yeah.
What's your opponent going to do? They're going to rush you down, charge your vehicle, then get out of your line of sight by going onto the objective. What I tend to do is I create a line of like 3 Sagittars, apologies, and I push them into the middle near nothing, just wide open in the middle.
Right.
But not near each other, because what they can do is they can charge Angron one way, they can charge 8-bound the other, they can kill the transport with Angron and then pile into you with the World Eaters, the 8-bound and kill whatever's inside. So you've got to be very careful where you put them. But if you do this, they have no shooting. So they've either got to kill your transports, or your transports are about to go run around and shoot things.
Right.
And then I have everything else back, but pre-measured that I'm going to get the line of sight from wherever they charge and pile into. And that's how I play it. Just create space, stay in space, make sure that you wipe it. And by turn 2, you could have killed Angron and all the 8-bound, and then they've got Berserkers left. Or you're winning massively on primary and secondary already. So it's about, so go on.
They're not an army that's defensive enough to be able to withstand multiple rounds of our shooting.
Yeah.
They're just going to stage and then try and get you. So building those walls stops them from doing that.
Exactly. If you're a Votan, don't even try and pre-game move forward and try and block them, because all you're doing is giving them free trading, because they'll kill them in their turn in safety, and then they'll still come and charge you because they can charge at what, like go 11 inches, 17 inches, and then charge no matter
Yep.
any turn. So the key is just forcing them to come out in the open, have them trade poorly into the Sagittars. Great, you lost Sagittars, but bikes, half guard, whatever, berserkers, anything will come and kill them. They
Right.
do die very quickly.
I think it's
Um,
important to look back at what you said. You know, you're sitting in this hypothetical scenario. There's nothing in the middle for it to matter for you in the sense of an objective. Is it
mhm.
important to sometimes recognize, especially in a matchup like this, that you may lose a turn of scoring? Like you may not get as much points as you normally would, but in the long run, it matters because if you were forcing your opponent to make a bad play in this regard, dealing with the threat in the middle, even though there's nothing strategically there, that is more important than the like maybe 4 points you may have gotten from scoring if there was an objective there or whatever. I don't know. Like, is that something that's kind of
No,
accurate?
that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Like I would absolutely sacrifice. You're never realistically gonna get a 100 against Ward Eaters if the Ward Eaters can play well. Because they'll stop you scoring for at least the first few turns. So just utilize that and let them come to you, kill them, trade well, and then start pushing once it's only berserkers left. And who cares if Angron comes back? Angron dies the second he comes back.
Right.
It's like, yeah. I think a lot of times as well is people just focus too much on trying to score when you've got five chances to score and not like three. Just
Right.
sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's better to just push and prevent scoring and then start scoring later. Also, the other thing as well is that sometimes it's really good to actually sacrifice units. So some
Mm.
games I will just throw, like I say, we throw three Sagittars to the wolves, let them die, but in return we pick up more points than they were worth.
Right.
Sacrificing and being able to play that. This is where it comes down to Eldar as well. Eldar is often won by sacrificing and baiting. So they either come into a bad position to kill something and then you can return fire with something else, or you're in a good position because then you can move even further in your turn. So Votan is very important because the units are very cheap that you need to know how to bait and switch, I would say.
Right. Actually, I think that point there, the bait and switch, is the biggest, is the make or break of our army. We live and die by the bait and switch because even though we do have a lot of cheap stuff right now we can throw on the board, which is nice. But losing any of those things, you know, losing a single Sagittar sucks. Even though if I'm doing it strategically, it still sucks because that is either if I have a missile or highlights on it, that's still a pretty nice piece of shooting. That was my transport that might move some guys onto a point to either take it or to do a secondary or whatever. So knowing when to throw that to the wolves is I think just as important as knowing can I make it to this point to capture it with like in another scenario. I think like that bait and switches we really do live and die by it, like
It's all
truly.
about the efficient trade. You got to make sure you're using things in the appropriate spaces. All right, so we don't have a ton of time left, and I want to make sure there's at least one faction that can be super popular amidst different metas, and we have, as Votan, an abysmal win rate into it. But, Danny, you've played against it, and you've been able to beat it to success, and I'm talking about Tau. I can't speak to everyone, but I know that at least for me locally, Tau is huge. It's actually a
Yeah.
major reason why at my recent GT, I was a coward and didn't bring Votan because a quarter,
Oh yeah,
literally
I haven't made
eight,
fun of you for this yet. Damn, thanks for reminding me.
it's fair. 8 people out of 32 were Tau.
That's a
And
dude, that's a lot.
it's a lot. And crisis suits are perfectly suited to obliterate things like Hearthguard, to almost nothing you can do. They kill them. But you had success in your games. How have you found Tau? What have you been doing?
I think it helps because I also play Town.
It
So
does.
Oh yeah, that's
I
actually a huge point. Yeah.
and but this is important. This comes down to if you understand how an army works, you can then figure out how to beat it, if that makes
Yeah.
Yep.
sense. So because I understand how Tau works, I understand its limitations, I know how to beat it. So the biggest thing about Tau is Tau do, let's say, nothing at all. I almost swore then. I don't know if we swear on this show, by the way.
You're
So
fine.
It's
Go
fine.
nuts.
Yeah, yeah. It's not really.
okay,
It's like half family friendly.
okay, half family friendly. Tau do naffle turn one. So if
Nice.
you So if you go first, let's say we're taking, let's say out of average, let's say 4 Sagittars because not everyone has 6. If Tau go first, the best thing to do is just charge forward, move forward. You go 6, you move your 12, and see what you can kill. So the priorities that you kill is Tetras. If you can kill Tetras by turn 2, all of them, you win the game. If you can get rid of all the piranhas by turn 2, you'll win the game. If you can get rid of Kroots, Kroot Hounds, whatever. Obviously, the theme here is if you can get rid of all their scoring units, they cannot win. The problem with towers, and I see this often, everybody builds very little scoring units and mostly damage. So that crisis unit might come in and they might kill your half guard, but who cares? Nothing's gonna score it. If it shoots, it can't score. It doesn't do actions. It can't do
Right,
whatever.
right.
If you kill all of their early trading pieces that they need to in order to survive to turn 3 when they pop off, if you can kill that really quickly, and I will sacrifice half my army to do this, they then have to start using key pieces to hold objectives, to move forward, to do actions and things like that, and then they start to struggle really quickly.
And that's a fantastic point, because a lot of people, I don't think they go into things, because Tau are really held up by things like those Tetras right now. And people do not give the right target priority to killing those as quickly as possible when they probably should.
And I think, sorry, real quick, because going back to, we're talking about our knowing what to sacrifice. When you're saying you're sacrificing half your army, it's very important to recognize that I think in this scenario, you are talking about sacrificing things like Sagittars, maybe even like Hearthguard in some scenarios, but I would assume that your bikes and your warriors are trying to be held in a position where they're the ones that could be left to score. And they're not going to be killing Tau, but they will be outscoring them in that scenario, right?
So if my opponent gives me an option, so if my opponent gives me a chance to move 6 bikes and I can kill enough with 6 bikes, I'll sacrifice 6 bikes because I've got another 6. That also means I don't have to sacrifice half guard. I'll absolutely probably take out 3 or 4 of my 6 Sagittars to kill all this turn 1.
Yeah.
And then doing things like charging crisis. So charging crisis is really important. Especially if you've got a line of crisis and they're hiding behind a wall, ruin or whatever, and you can charge either end of them crisis. First of all, they -1 to hit. Second of all, if you kill Tetras, they're not going to kill you. They won't kill they won't kill a Sagittar. They won't kill 2. Thirdly, they cannot be spotted and then split because one of them is going to survive because they hit on 5s or 6s actually because -1 to hit. So if you can start utilizing that, that's really important because then if they do somehow kill you magically, they can only fire and fade 12 inches, which isn't a lot of distance. It gives you a half guard ground, especially if you rapid ingress. It also gives you the safety to rapid ingress in his turn if you manage to tie up some of that crisis because he can't shoot you.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the point, if I can take out all of their scoring units and sacrifice anything that I need to, I'll do it because it wins. It really does win the matchup, to be honest. So
yeah, here I am every single time running after the broadsides, trying to get the ghost kill, like trying to get these things that don't fucking matter because I'm like, oh, that thing is gonna kill me. But you're absolutely right. Like, who cares?
So for an example, what do I if my opponent's got 2 squads of Tetras, 2 piranhas, 1 Kroot Hound, some crisis, some ghost kills, and some broadsides, I will put tokens on the piranhas. No, I'll put tokens on 1 piranha, 2 Tetras, and I'll always put a token on the crisis just to keep the big squad, just to keep him a bit more honest.
Yeah.
Because if he does somehow fuck up his positioning, then
right.
if I get a chance to kill the crisis, they'll die.
Yeah, truly.
But the key here is early game, kill the piranhas because the piranhas are really important. The Tetras are really important. The Kroot Hounds, you don't need a token for them.
Right? Yeah, they just die. They just fold. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just charge with a Sagittar and tank shock and they'll die. But if you focus on killing, and honestly, actually, this really goes for a lot of armies. If you focus on killing what allows them to win the game early and allows them to score early, they'll start to struggle. And I focus this on almost every army. I'll always have 1 token on like the big issue. So like if I'm against CSM, I'll have 1 token on one of the Forge Fiends, and the reason I do that is because I want to force them to keep spending that CP to not be shot. Because CP is really important in CSM. And then I'll just put like on the shaft, the Nurglings or whatever, I'll put on the tokens on them and just kill them very quickly. And that way they can't score as much. Versus Eldar, I put 1 on the Incarn always because if if she decides
You're
she wants to
seeing
go a
her.
bit aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna see her.
Yeah, Wraithguard never, because they go if they see you and shoot you, they're gonna get a token anyway. What's the point?
Yep.
And if they play correctly, you're never gonna shoot them anyway, so it's pointless. But I'll put it on like one Incarn and then the rest on Warp Spiders.
Sure.
Yeah, it's great.
And
All right. Well, we've covered some big boogeymen here. Anything else?
The biggest boogeyman.
I agree. Any other armies that we think we want to throw out just as a quick shout out before we melt away here?
This is interesting because you all mentioned Space Marines, you all mentioned Death Guard, and I think Tyranids is probably the next biggest, hardest one.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, because I've seen you've famously been talking about the Vanguard recently.
Yeah, so I actually played against Tyranids on the weekend and I lost. It's my one proper loss. And that was I only took 10 half guard because I wanted to try something different. But the problem with there is they've got better shooting than we do. Especially if they take Exocrines and Maleceptors, they've got really good melee, but then they've got a lot of chaff that can just come and take objectives. So if you only have the one lot of half guard, they can only cover 1/4 of the table. That means that Tyranids are able to just move around and start scoring and denying points everywhere, and you're not having enough units to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, Tyranids are deceptive in what they can do right now.
I think they're top 3 army. I think Tyranids, Craftworld.
Nice.
Yeah, Tyranids, Craftworld, and CSM, the top 3 armies. The problem is there's not many people are good at Tyranids.
Yeah.
A lot of people played them in 9th when they were really strong. Got let's say maybe a warped sense of how good they are with that army, and now they're struggling. But to see someone play really well with Tyranids is scary. It's really hard for Votan.
Sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things that they have. They have an amount of builds right now that can work. You have Vanguard, Synaptic Nexus. They have a bunch of different choices. But I think one of those things that might be maybe holding Tyranids back from being as visible as it is that I think this is true for Tau too, but there's a gap between player caliber that are often playing certain armies. So in Tau, I say this all the time, there are 2 types of players. You're either going to have your generic weeb that just is bringing a bunch of Riptides and has no idea what they're doing and they're just there for a fun time. Or you're going to have an actual space terrorist that's going to do a terrifying amount of stuff, and you're never going to get the opportunity to shoot them. And the same is true for Tyranids. You're going to have folks that are there, and they're like, hey, I just got some bugs because they look neat, and I like the movie Alien. It's like, all right, cool, good for you, dude. Or you're going to have some folks that are like, actually, if I position myself exactly here, I've pre-measured this, and I can make sure that you're never going to get the opportunity. And it's just, they can be nuts.
And Eric Lathoris is like a perfect example of what happens if you take someone who's really good at the game and plays the army to the top level. Yeah. I don't think he's dropped points on Tyranids since have come out. I think it's been 20-0 every time.
Wow.
And that's versus every army. Yeah,
that's impressive.
They have so much potential. Yeah, they have so much potential, but it's not easy. And like you say, it's the same thing with a lot of armies: Space Marines, CSM, Death Guard, etc. There's a lot of fanboys. There's a lot of people that are casual. They take crap lists. They've not got a lot of models. This is why I don't like win rates. They tank it down. But then you have the really top players who will pick up an army because they've got a scent and a whiff that there's something in there that can carry them.
Sure.
And and win and success, and that's what they do. And Tyranids, I think, are being massively slept on.
Well,
love that.
I'm gonna go ahead and cut that portion out of this. It's not really like that many people listen to this the podcast that much anyway. But I'm just gonna let everyone sleep on that a little bit more longer because I don't feel like dealing with 30 lictors and goddamn those. I don't feel like dealing with all that shit running at me. So.
No, I think it's great. I think Tyranids are something that I haven't had the opportunity to play against because they kind of just disappeared locally for me.
No, same.
We ended up
having
having an inhuman amount of Tau for God knows whatever reason, but I haven't gotten the real chance to play against Tyranids. Honest, I have Sam Pope. He plays the Endless Swarm, and that can be terrifying to look at. But I think often with Hearthguard, we have an interesting matchup into that. But I would love to get some more reps into Tyranids. They're one of those armies that for me almost fell to the side. I've been seeing less of them and less of orcs lately. I don't mind seeing less orcs.
I wish I saw less
zero
orcs
and be happy.
I wish I saw less orcs. Ugh.
It's an interesting call out.
Because I have. It's funny because real quick before we sign out, I'm very curious to see what the next month or so leads for me because I have an RTT this Saturday, and then in like a week and a half, I have that
Midwinter.
the Everwinter, and then
Yep.
like not even a month from that, I have LVO, and I kind of just have no. I mean, I'm gonna see everything. That's the thing. It's not like I'm gonna see like Pepper. I'm gonna see like probably everything in the next couple months in a competitive sense. So I don't even know where I'm at in terms of like what am I preparing. I think I've made my list. The list I'm playing. I played it last weekend or 2 weekends ago. I had an RTT and I went 2-1. I have this one here, and I'm feeling comfortable with. I'm comfortable. I'm feeling good with it, you know. And I've built it kind of as a means of dealing with I think a few different things, and then just scoring with against everything else. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I don't know. I'm just like so curious. Well, I, who knows what it's going to be? I think it's going to be a million different things. So
I think it'll be good.
Good.
So I think we have the opportunity here because we're gonna phase out here towards our ending, but I want to end us on an interesting little thought experiment here.
ooh,
But we noted before we had a data slate change a few months ago, and we have another one coming up in January. So Danny, and we didn't prep you for this at all, but if you had a top 3 ideas maybe of things that you might like to see change or get updated in that January update, whether that's rules or points, anything you'd like to see.
Sagittarius
You could
50
wish-
points.
Magical Christmas Land, things that either you think should go up or go down, but just a snippet of things that you think could be useful. Doesn't even
You
have to
mean
be
for
rotated.
Votan or in general?
Just top 3 meta, whatever you think you'd like to see.
So I'd like to see Dark Pack just flat out beat D3 Mortals. I
Oh, you
would
mean like
to
not if you
see
fail it, like it just happens. So you
just
take mortals if you
flat out
dark
D-
pack.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
a great change.
That seems fair.
I would like to see. I don't know what about Eldar, but something change because it's still a bit.
Night
play
Spinners.
against.
Kick them right off the face of the earth. They should cost
I
a
mean-
billion more points.
I mean, if I had a wish, if I had a genie and I got 3 wishes, one would be a lot of money. I don't know. The next one would be, I don't know, live forever, and then the other one would be indirect, just nerfed and removed from the entire game. But it's not even Night Spinners. I think the Incarn should just not charge when it teleports.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same.
I think it
That's
should
what was
be
in 9th
once per
edition.
turn teleport.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
it popped up,
It
you
should go
can't
back
charge
to
the same
9th
turn.
edition. Sure. Should go back to 9th edition, drop the bitch to 300 points. I don't care.
Yep.
It's
Love
too
it.
easy right now.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I would probably increase Sagittars by about 20 points.
20. You really think 20?
Yeah. I don't think. I think if they revert. I think if they revert Votan in the current state, as everybody's getting better and better into Votan, the meta is actually shifting into a place where Votan aren't actually going to be in a good place, in my opinion, in the next 3 months.
Yeah.
If they then revert on all the points changes, it's going to be really difficult. For me, I'd have to have a very serious conversation about whether if it's worth taking Votan or just revert back to GSE.
Yeah.
Because, well, GSE is shit anyway. But because
It's true. We are.
they're only Votan's only good thing is A, the speed, and B, the points efficiency. If they fuck that, then the army's got really no power.
Yeah. True.
And it's not exciting to play. Like, I enjoy it because I love the models, but it's not. I don't play it and think, oh my god, this is the most exciting thing ever.
Seriously. What? Because we are still stale. It is still a stale
Yeah.
data slate, and that's why, or data slate, data sheets, and that's why hopefully, and none of us know this for sure, but hopefully, come a year from now, the fall winter of 2024, if we ever see some new models for us in a codex, maybe that'll change. But you're right. I think that is if Votans keep doing well and they raise some points, and suddenly the landscape of how we're looking at changes, it might be too difficult to play the army again. I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, indirect.
Or it's
can
not
fuck off.
worth it because the effort that you put in just nets like very little reward. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
more concerned on. So like, I enjoy Votan. I play an army. I don't play an army for power. So like when an army gets nerfed, I tend to play it. So like I dropped GSC because it was too strong. I stopped playing Tau because it was too strong. And I don't think Votan is too strong. I just think. I know it's probably a very hot take for a lot of people, but I think it's a medium level army. It's just very point sufficient, and the meta at the time just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
However, now we are seeing the meta as the points drops, the win ratio is going down. The meta is people are starting to cock on. The meta is starting to deal with it. So
Yes,
it'd be really rough to play it if they did walk back on the points. I think.
Yeah, they can't do all of them.
yeah.
Well, folks, again, this has been a great session. Hopefully we gave you some stuff to chew on. We appreciate you coming out today, Danny, and giving giving everybody in attendance some more to listen to. You want to give any shout outs? You have any socials? You have a
true.
YouTube channel, anything like that you want us
I-
to keep an eye on?
I what do I want to shout out? Obviously, Team Polo. Let's
Alien
go. We're
Majesty?
gonna win it this year.
Hell
Alien
yeah.
Majesty is really good. If you like Tyranids or GSE, Alien Majesty is a really good Discord to get involved in and a good community. And then we've got my boys at Contact Lost, which is a podcast
Oh yeah.
from Poland that focuses on competitive. So if anyone's interested,
Great.
go for Contact Lost.
And we'll
And then
have all
obviously
those
you
links in
two.
the bottom too. We'll have all those links in the bottom
Yeah.
for people to check out. And I also still I'll plug it everyone the Votan competitive Discord. Please come hang out with us. It's a lovely group of people. We're a bunch of idiots just talking about stupid stuff in the best way
Mostly
possible.
idiots.
Mostly idiots. Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
All right, folks, again, thank you so much for coming out. You know the deal. Press the buttons, do all the things. You have a good rest of your day.
Thank you,
Have a
Danny.
good one.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Danny. Bye.